Welcome to Innovate Asia, a podcast spotlighting visionary pioneers tackling Asia's toughest challenges with groundbreaking ideas.
I think a lot of us know what we truly desire on the inside, but whether or not we're willing to admit these things or not, that's a whole other thing. Traditional 9-to-5, path for me, I always felt like something was off. And then on that very first trip to Thailand, I just walked outside my hotel. I saw this lady with a noodle cart, and she had the biggest smile on her face, like a genuine, real smile. Up to then, I had worked in corporate, and even the senior partners, right, at the firms who we were told like, oh, this guy has an awesome life, right? I could tell that he was miserable himself. That was the penny dropping moment where I said, okay, maybe I've been just playing along my whole life, but I don't really believe in this. I always wondered, why does the dollar do so well against the Thai baht? We have better standard of living because of geo arbitrage, right? But I never sat down to think and ask, like, why is this the case? And then through a Muay Thai gym in Phuket in 2021, I met this shitcoiner. He's like, hey, let's chat one day. And then he told me what fiat is and why it's evil. Breakpoint, it's like the biggest Solana conference. One day we're eating dinner and there's this guy in a business suit, has no idea what crypto is. And he's sitting with us and he asks us, right? He's like, so what benefit is there of having in-game NFTs? And I remember when he asked the table that, all of us looked at each other, but no one was able to give him a straight answer. And it was at that moment that I knew, I was like, oh my God, I've been lying to myself. But the book that really changed me was Thank God for Bitcoin. For example, talk about the problems of stealing value from citizens, right? Like the Romans were doing this. And to me, that was the breaker at that moment when I realized that altcoins, they'll never be Bitcoin. Without them pushing the narrative, no one adopts it. People are just rugging each other. But Bitcoin, there's no team. That was the moment where I sold all my altcoins and been Bitcoin only ever since.
All right, dude. I'm pumped. I'm really excited for this chat. I think you have a unique lens as an American expat who found freedom through solo travel and remote work, and what it's like to break free from the norms of America. I had similar experiences as a solo traveler, which makes me super energized for this conversation. But before we get into it, I want to set the stage for the audience. You recently did a video called Solo Travel Ruined Me. And I don't think I made it 90 seconds until I said, I need to talk to him. I was hooked, man. I was like, yes. As I continue to watch, it drew so many parallels to both my experiences as a traveler and the way that many Bitcoiners live.
Yeah.
And so once they had the similar revelations, and you being a traveler and a Bitcoiner is not that common yet. So I'm super excited to do this with you. I can feel your transformation through your videos, and it's infectious. We created Innovate Asia because the word innovate is defined to make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods and ideas. So we wanted to chat with trailblazers and innovative thinkers like yourself on travel, health, entrepreneurship, Bitcoin, illuminating why we believe Bitcoin offers hope or a solution for those living in Asia. There are so many Bitcoin podcasts in the West, but rarely do you see them focused on Asia, which has over 4 billion people and many of the problems Bitcoin could fix. So we want to create a platform for English-speaking people in Asia. So I think the best place to start is if we could get a brief introduction from you, where you're from, who you are, maybe who you were, and what you're dialed into lately. And then we could jump right into solo travel and travel experiences.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that intro, Jimmy. So my name is Danny. I'm from the suburbs of Baltimore, Maryland, USA. So grew up my whole life, probably 25 minutes outside of Baltimore. A son to Korean immigrants in the USA. So growing up in the States was always unique because I always felt like I had two cultures. So I think that really helps with traveling because I was always like comparing the cultures anyway growing up. Um, and a little bit of background about myself, who I used to be. So I was fully plugged into the traditional route, man, like from the very beginning. My parents did a great job brainwashing me to really want that 9 to 5 dream. And, I completely understand them because they were struggling, right? They were blue collar workers. They were putting 13, 14 hours a day. So they wanted a better life for me. So growing up, all I wanted was to do well in school, graduate from university, land a corporate job, and go up the corporate ladder until I retire. Like that's the only life I knew. Especially around the Baltimore, DC area, that's what people do. A lot of people are in government. They work for some government branch for 30, 40 years, and then they retire on a pension, and that's the life path that I knew. And then in 2014, my life changed. It was my last semester of university. I just needed 3 more college credits to double major. So my school was offering this study abroad trip in Thailand. And the reason why I do quotes is it was more like a 2-week holiday. We visited a few businesses. We did some, nonprofit work. We visited, some embassies and stuff. But most of the time it was just travel. And that was my first time to a country outside of America and Korea. So that was like, it shattered everything I knew about myself. And after that, I was hooked on travel. So when I started my corporate gig after graduating, every holiday that I got, I used all my PTO on travel. So I backpacked through Southeast Asia, backpacked through India, Central Europe. And then around 7 years ago, I dove into the deep end. I had a decent amount of savings. I had some experience under my belt. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try this whole remote work thing. And this was before it was mainstream, right? This is pre-COVID. So people thought I was crazy, because I had this quote unquote awesome job, right, at a reputable consulting company. And I just left. And I said, guys, I'm going to Chiang Mai. And they're like, what's in Chiang Mai? You want to go see ladyboys? Like those are the responses that I got. Yeah. And, here I am 7 years later, lived in 4 countries, 3 continents, been supporting myself fully online ever since. And my travels led me down to first altcoins, but you know what that is. And then in 2023, I became a Bitcoiner and had my eyes open to the reality of the financial system and Bitcoin as the solution to a lot of these problems. And yeah, over the years, I got a lot more into health and just long-term thinking. So with all these experiences, I was kind of able to put it all together and now have like my own worldview and my own set of beliefs and principles and whatnot. So I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of rambled on.
Yeah, definitely. No, this is great. Perfect. I have a lot of questions prepared. I think too many because I was really excited, but we could just use them as a guide. I also grabbed some of your tweets because I think it tells a story. It's really fun to watch you discover all of this. And I want to start with like this first quote, which got me right away. It was in the very beginning of your video. You had said, and it was at this moment I knew my whole life up to this point was pretend.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that because I think it takes a certain kind of person to be that self-aware to peel back the onion far enough and embrace that and say that and then publicly come out and teach us and tell us that. So could you elaborate more about that penny dropping moment or that euphoric moment when you knew and you were able to say something so powerful like that?
Yeah. Before I get to that, I want to talk about a certain point. I think a lot of us know what we truly desire on the inside. I think a lot of us know on a subconscious level, but whether or not we're willing to admit these things or not, that's a whole other thing. So my whole life, like growing up with this traditional 9 to 5, path for me, I always felt like something was off. Like I was in it, but I wasn't convinced. A lot of my friends, especially because I went to business school, right? Like a lot of my friends were just like so happy that, they got a job at, BCG or Bain or whatnot. And they're just like strutting around and they're telling themselves, I made it. But then the whole time I was thinking like, this can't be all there is, like we can't, our life should be more than just going to an office, because we have to, 40 plus hours a week, getting 2 weeks of holiday a year and working towards retirement, right? My whole life, I knew something was off. And then on that very first trip to Thailand, I remember it was in Bangkok and it was in the morning. I just walked outside my hotel and I saw this like lady with a noodle cart, and this was 2014. So this was over 10 years ago. So noodles back then were selling like 30 baht for like a large bowl, right? And that's less than $1. 30 baht less than $1. And she had the biggest smile on her face. As she was serving this to customers, like a genuine, real smile. And I remember up to then, I had worked in corporate, and even the senior partners, right, at the firms who we were told like, oh, this guy has an awesome life. Look at the sports car he drives. He made it. Everyone at the company respects him. But when I looked at the guy's face, like I could tell that he wasn't happy, right? I could tell that he was miserable himself, and he was just, making it up to himself with all these accolades and the toys and whatnot. But this lady, she had like real happiness, like a real smile. And that was the penny dropping moment where I said, okay, maybe I've been just playing along my whole life, but I don't really believe in this. Maybe I need to learn more and see what's out there and discover what I want for myself. And yeah, that was the moment.
Was that like a scary revelation? I mean, like, that's a pretty big change to accept that your life pretend.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary because I felt very alone. So yeah, I think what happens a lot is people call it travel high, right? That's what my friends called it. Mm-hmm. So after this trip, I went back to the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I met up with friends and I told them about Thailand, and they're like, yeah, just give it a week or two and you'll be back to the way you were, or they'll say like, oh, I had a similar experience when I went to Cancun for, they would bring stuff like this up. And then I realized how alone I am, like all those contacts, my friends, my family back home, they just would not understand me. So it was scary and it was lonely.
Bro, I went through the same exact thing. That's why I'm just like, it's so wonderful to talk about this. And when we met in person before, there's a lot going on. So it's kind of tough to just get time to talk to you. And I mentioned briefly offline that I had similar experience when I went to Cambodia. In 2018, I had started my first solo travel. And I was like 39 or 38 at the time, maybe 37. So at the end of my 30s, and I had just said, I want to go to Vietnam. It was my first time outside of like the Mexico America thing, or maybe like the Bahamas. And I remember like when you were telling that story of like your whole life is pretend, I had built up the courage to go to a hostel because I didn't know what it really, this was 2017 or 18. I didn't really know like, about that life. And then I built up the courage. I got on a motorbike, had my big Osprey backpack. I went to the hostel and I was just like I felt like I was on like the best drugs of the world or something. Like these solo travelers from all over the world, Australia, the UK, Spain, France, Germany, they're on their gap year. They're young. They're just fucking. They're little explorers. I was just totally transfixed. And after having a few beers there, and they're singing songs, and they're younger, this is my very first time. It was in a place called in Siem Reap called YOLO Hostel. It's a
YOLO
little
Hostel.
event. YOLO.
I've been there.
You've been there.
I've been there. Yeah, go on.
This is great. So I remember there was one night where I had that same moment you had with the Noodle lady in Thailand, that it all clicked. There was an older guy from Spain. There was maybe someone my age from Portugal. And I had to like get up and walk behind like an area, because I was like, my emotions were just like, wait a minute, I am engaged in America. I've got like, I have this whole life that doesn't make sense. Like, that's not me. Like, and it was hard for me. Like, I had like, I remember the time that I had a hard time kind of keeping it all together when I realized that my life was not exactly what I was doing the same thing as you, the job, keeping up the Joneses, all that. And then I had that revelation. So I wanted to share that I had that similar moment. And then you had mentioned when you went back that your friends were like, oh, this is just a travel high. You'll be good in 2 weeks. Dude, when I came back within 2 days from my 3-month Southeast Asia trip, I bought a motorbike.
Nice.
Like a moped.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I'm in South Florida. It doesn't really work. Like, the roads are kind of big. I just needed that. And it was at that time I said, I've got to go. I got to go somewhere right now to see if this was just something. So I went down to Colombia, and then it was then that I said, okay, my next time that I'm coming back to America, I'm going to sell every single thing I have. I'm going to get in an Osprey backpack, and I'm going to leave. And I left 3 months after that big solo trip. And I've never been back. I mean, I'm visiting family in New York today. So I'm quickly traveling because I live in Chiang Mai. So when I hear your story and I'm literally saying, yes, as you go through these developments or these discoveries of yourself. Now, I want to go back on a couple things. You said that like everybody has this. You believe everybody has this.
Yes.
I believe you may be right. But I do not believe everyone has the courage or the risk tolerance to step outside of that box. I mean, like, maybe, yes, that's an innate thing that we have, is like, we're humans, we've got feet, we should move. But like, I think that's a little bit like, yeah, we all have that. Everyone should go. I think there's like a lot to suss out between each individual person's ability to recognize where they should be. You know, like, I don't think many people have these revelations as much as we think, you know?
Right. So yeah, so what I completely agree with your analogy on feet and walking. I think, you know, as humans, we are blessed to have intuition, and, you know, people call it the sixth sense, you know, like we know when something is off. And I think the easier thing to do is to lie to yourself and be okay with it. Right. Like, for example, the fiat system, that's a whole other topic, but like,
don't go there yet.
Right. Everyone knows what inflation is. Right. Everyone talks about it. You go to the dinner table at Thanksgiving, people are like, oh my God, the prices of eggs have gone up. Right. But no one stops to sit there and ask, like, why is this the case? And it's because it's easier to lie to ourselves. Yeah. And I think it's the same with programming in every country, right? Like, this revelation of travel and finding purpose for yourself, it takes a step of bravery to do that. And I completely agree with that. And I think bravery, in my experience, is kind of like a muscle, you know, like, if you, in day-to-day life, practice taking those small, brave steps, then the bigger steps become easier. And that's what I mean. I think everyone has it in them, but whether or not they're willing to act on it, that's a whole other thing.
You're so clear on on like your discovery. Like I think if I were to ask you if you'll ever go back, I think I already know the answer. Like no, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so great. You said also, one of, and none of my goals, beliefs, or hobbies were my own. And could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, for sure. So like kind of going back to the 9 to 5 path that was given to me, I didn't choose that, right? It was like my parents wanted that for me. In school, we were taught that this is what we should want. Um, yeah, I didn't pick it. So it
yeah,
wasn't mine to begin with. You know, I just did it because everyone else is doing it. You know, it's like sheep mentality. Oh, everyone else is doing it. This must be correct. So my goals weren't my own. Another thing was my hobbies, right? So because I grew up in the DMV, you know, like as a white collar worker, like what are your hobbies? You know, people go to the gym, people hang out at cafes, talk to each other, go out to the bar on Friday. Maybe they'll go golfing on the weekends. But was I sitting there like super ecstatic about those things? Absolutely not, you know? So just like you, like I discovered that I like driving mopeds when I came out to Southeast Asia. And I would have never done that in the States because no one does it. So that's just a small example of why I realized that my goals, passions, and hobbies were not my own. I just did it because everyone else is doing it.
do you think that people can discover this without traveling? Like, or is it just like if you stay within your same city and you're in the same system on the same day to day things, it's substantially harder to break through. Like, is travel like the way to quickly figure yourself out? Do you think?
Mm. I would say travel is definitely one of the more healthier ways. Uh, I feel weird saying this, but I dabbled in plant medicine. I also know people who have as well, and that's another avenue. But, you know, people have their qualms about that because it's chemically induced versus travel, you know, is healthy. There's no, yeah, there's no chemicals. You're just going on a plane and going somewhere. But I think there's other avenues. I also think coaching is a way. So I know some great life coaches who are transforming people's lives, even though they've never left the comfort of America. They're having these transformations. I also think this is a really bad one, but I've also met people who had these realizations after like a near-death experience or after losing a family member. Because then they're like reminded of their mortality, right? They're like, oh, wait a second, like this can end at any second. Do I really want to keep living like this? So I think there's many ways, but travel is, come on, it's fun, it's safe, it's great.
Dude, I've just got so many great questions. This is great. And I remember one other quote I wanted to hit on before I ask some questions that I had saved. You said that every country has a different version of history. And then I remember when I got to Vietnam and I was there for a month and it was in Sapa in the north and it was a little bit off the beaten track.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized they had said the American War.
Mm.
And like my brain was like, wait a minute. Of course, the American War, like, and every country, like you said in your video, has a different version of history, and you don't recognize it. Like, I remember when you were in America, and we both lived in America, we thought America was the safest place in the world, right?
Yep.
And now you live in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, an 18-year-old female could zigzag across the city and be totally fine.
No problems, no worries.
What if you leave your laptop at a cafe?
I've done it many times. Sometimes I've left the cafe to go meet my friend for lunch, and I came back to the cafe. It's still there.
Yeah, like if your phone, you know, if you leave your phone, you go to the bathroom. Like when I'm traveling, I just left Switzerland and Italy to make my way back to see family in America, and then I would get up at the cafe. And usually I leave my phone because I'm just going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But then I'd say, oh, wait a minute. I'm not, I have to remember that the rest of the world, some countries are not like that. And actually
Right.
the Western countries appear to be more dangerous.
Right.
You know, it's like, no one told me that part either,
Right. Yeah. It's like in America, we're brainwashed. Like that's what my friends say. I don't want to go to Thailand. It seems dangerous. It seems
Yeah.
dirty and dangerous. That's what I always hear from my American friends.
Yeah. I think it couldn't be further from the truth. Um, let me see if I could pull up a couple of these questions I have for you. Um, I think, let's see here. Okay, yeah, this one. So solo travel exposes you to like a varied definitions of success,
Mm.
from like minimalist lifestyle to thriving urban hubs. Has there been a place that redefined what success means to you, like other than the noodle shop lady? And how did it align or challenge like your beliefs of independence and value?
Right. So I'm going to use Thailand as another example, but
Please do. I
for
understand it
me,
well.
for me, Thailand, especially in the south, right, on the islands, I still think Chiang Mai has a little bit of hustle culture, but like a lot of the Thai islands, uh, what I noticed that a lot of local Thais value is the whole concept of Sabai Sabai. Like I'm sure you're aware of that. Like they prefer to kind of take life in a relaxed way. So for example, if they're tired, they'll just take a nap. So I've seen it a lot, right? Like tuk-tuk drivers, like just napping, in their tuk-tuks, like midday. And I think in America, like we're so programmed to always want more, right? It's like more money is good. More work equals more money. So that's good. Or like, I want a bigger house. My house is big, but I want a bigger one. I have a car, but I want another one. And we're willing to kind of forego our work-life balance. We're willing to forego our health, all for the sake of like more and more net worth. But going back to these local ties, I think what they value more is kind of like that day-to-day balance. I know a lot of Muay Thai trainers who, for them, what matters a lot is being able to buy a beer at the end of the day, you know? So sometimes they'll even deny a private lesson. Somebody's like, hey, I want to have a private lesson at 8 p.m. And they'll be like, you know what? Like, I've worked enough today. I made enough money. Like, I just want to have a beer. So that kind of redefined what success looks like to me, because for the first time in my life, like now I value time more, or flexibility, or options. And these were things that I wasn't considering in the States. I was just considering, okay, what's the salary of this position? And, what's the benefits package, without considering these kind of more intangibles, if that makes sense.
Sure. And so, help us understand what it is that you do for a living. Remotely able to have a life, living, experience all of this.
Right. So, I'm a software engineer. So I'm freelancing, and I kind of take it. I'm able to accept projects that I want to work on and decline other ones that I don't. Or sometimes I'll find a project that I want to work on and reach out. So that's what allowed me to have this lifestyle of flexibility. More recently, I've been coaching. So end of last year, started doing fitness coaching, and now I'm doing, I call it purpose coaching, but what it is more is it's alignment. So I'm helping guys to find what their true purpose is, and to really dial in on that and live it out every day. So those are the two things that I'm working on. Also building a cool app with a friend about kind of living a more positive life in friend groups. So we're working on this idea right now too. So we'll see. A lot of fun projects. And now I'm in a phase where I just really want to work on things that I care about.
This is awesome. Was there like an unexpected lesson from a particular destination that helped you navigate the chaos of solo travel? Because it's not all roses, it can have its challenges. And how did that maybe like influence your approach to leadership and coaching?
Yeah, sure. So, like you, I've been to Colombia. I lived there 6 months in 2022, and I went there actually to work on a Solana project. So, this is before I'm a Bitcoiner.
But this is great. This is how most people. This is most people's just development.
Yeah. So previously, I had lived in Thailand for over 2 years straight. So I was used to kind of like the chill and safety of Thailand, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I was lackadaisical. I was a bit sloppy. But when I got to Colombia to work on this project, Colombia is very different from Thailand. A lot of people call like Medellin the Chiang Mai of South America, but I will disagree 100%. Because in Colombia, you cannot leave your phone at a table. It will be gone. You know, you can't even text with an open window. You know, chances are somebody will swipe it and go. So with this level of kind of danger, I became a lot more proactive. You know, not just in personal leadership or you know, with work, but just everything in general. Like I had to plan. I remember I rented a scooter in Medellin too, because, you know, I love it. And one day I just kind of did the Chiang Mai thing. I just started driving and I thought it'd be okay, right? But I took a turn and I ended up in kind of like, I forgot the Spanish word, but basically like a favela. And when I turned in, everyone stared at me. And dude, like I'm Asian, right? So everyone in Colombia calls me Chino, Chino. So I was like the center of attention and the hair stood up on my skin. I was like, I should not be here. I need to turn around. And just living in that environment where things are a bit more hostile, I learned that you have to be more proactive and plan. And that's a lesson that I took away to this day. Like, even though I'm living in Thailand again, I'm just a lot more proactive and not only do I plan my days like the itinerary, but I kind of like lead it towards a more specific goal than before. I was just Sabai.
Thinking back to my time there, I had a similar experience. I was in San Gil, that big adventure area of Colombia where they go like paragliding, and I did like the whitewater rafting. There was an emergency in the river. It's crazy. I had done the paragliding and we had an emergency landing. Like it was like 1 out of 1,000, but I was a bigger dude. I was like 230, 40 pounds. So this was part of the problem. We had an emergency landing. It was crazy. But I remember going to the bar and I had a hostel and I was there for like a week and the kids were like, dude, Jimmy, what bunk bed are you in? Like, well, you hear every day, but like, which one's yours? Because, and I was like, oh, I had an Airbnb just like up 2 blocks away, but I stayed in the hostel.
Right.
And I was in that little square in San Gil. I was buying them beers and stuff. And, you know, I was having so much fun. I'm like, yeah, let's get beers are cheap, whatever it was. And they didn't like it. Like the locals where they were around that area saw me loud American, flashy, buying drinks, having too much fun. And this is in the beginning of my travels. And then this is actually my first 6 months traveling. And the bartender told one of the travelers to tell me that those 2 guys are going to rob him.
Right.
They came over and told me that they're going to rob him. So you might want to walk your American friend back to your hostel because it's about to happen. Like, it was like a real threat, like a real thing. I had that very similar, like, okay, not like I'm the cool guy and I'm going to fight. Like you're way out of your depth. You're not on your same, you know, you don't have this. It's not like it is back home. You have to start having that situational awareness is what I think is a good word of when you were talking about, you can't just leave your phone or rock up to like some gangster place in the middle of Colombia.
Right. And on that note, this is what scared me was I was living in El Poblado in Medellin. It's kind of like I would compare it to like the Neiman Haman of Chiang Mai. It's like where all the foreigners hang out, right? And one day I was just sitting at a cafe, and I heard that that cafe got robbed at gunpoint, actually. So like 3 armed men came, closed off all the exits, and basically put a gun to everyone and took their laptops, phones, and wallets, all of that. So I was sitting there and I was just observing the street, and I saw how the gangs coordinate. So I saw like a prostitute walking, and I saw her look at this guy who looks like he's just handing out flyers, but I could tell he's scoping out targets. He's like saying like, okay, that American looks like he's sloppy. He looks drunk. And then I saw the prostitute approach him, right? So this
Yes.
this is a very coordinated thing, and that's ultimately why I left. You know, I mean, there's great parts about Colombia, but
Sure.
I learned a lot of lessons living there.
Was there another destination? You said that you've been to 30 countries. Is that right?
Yeah, 30 countries.
Was there another destination or a moment other than Colombia or Thailand that pushed your comfort zone, or or reshaped your worldview or approach to life's challenges?
Yeah. So when you say that, the place that comes to mind is India. Uh, have you been to India?
No.
Okay, so I always tell people this. If you want to travel, if you want to experience travel, go to India. And the reason why I say that is outside of your hotel, it is probably the least tourist friendly place I've ever been to. It's like, oh, you want to India? Let's slap you in the face with India, you know? Just the intensity. Every time you leave the hotel, you see like rickshaws, which are tuk-tuks, and scooters honking at each other. You see cows crossing the street, kids running around, people getting into fights. It's just absolute chaos. And this was actually not a solo trip. I was traveling with 3 friends from the States, but we backpacked around India for 5 weeks, like in a big circle. And what India taught me is to be firm. So what I mean by that is like, if you want something, you're going to have to fight for it. So every Indian market, for example, if you don't haggle, you're going to get scammed. And that's just the way it is. And they haggle differently from, for example, Thais. Like, I feel like Thais, they smile, they're very kind. And you could still kind of like get your way in a very soft way. But in India, that doesn't work. In India, if you're wishy-washy, you're going to get squashed. So I learned that, yeah, in India, you have to, be sure of what you want. Like, you're like, all right, I'm going to that destination now. And then be willing to fight for it, because, you know, scammers will come, like there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be a car accident. We got into an accident and a fight broke out. Like we almost went to jail, our first night in India. That's a whole other thing. So yeah, just being firm and be willing to fight. That's the first lesson. And number 2 is letting go of control. So because India is so chaotic, you cannot predict anything. So if Google Maps says like, okay, it's going to take 30 minutes from here to there, it's not going to take 30 minutes. There's going to be like a cow crossing or something, you know? So you have to relinquish control, or you're going to get frustrated and you can't live day to day like that. So it's this weird combination of like knowing what you want and being firm, but also relinquishing control. So those are 2 lessons that I try to still live by till today, you know, like have goals, work hard, be firm in them, but also things aren't going to work out the way we expect it, right? So be flexible.
You know, that chaos and uncertainty is like the polar opposite of why we're so attracted to Bitcoin. It's just very predictable and very structured, and we know how it operates. So like, I think that travel, like there's a lot of parallels between, you know, traveling the world, experiencing all of these different places, and then starting to ask some questions about yourself, discover more of who you are, pull back the curtain and say, that wasn't me. And now you're learning all of these things. You're kind of in like hyperdrive. You know, your brain's on rapid fire. You got to be alert. You're alone. You don't got like your whole family and friends everywhere. It's just some people you might have just met.
Right.
So I think like, and before we get into the Bitcoin thing, you're also a fighter, right? You're a Muay Thai fighter. You've trained, you've done bodybuilding competitions. Like, how do you maintain this level of health as a traveler? Or when you finally kind of planted your feet in Southeast Asia, then you became this? Or
Mm.
can you travel and be healthy at the same time? Like, is that possible?
I'm gonna answer that question first.
Sorry, it's
Absolutely.
a lot.
You know,
Absolutely. Okay,
like
cool.
I developed a whole system of hotel workouts without any equipment. So one of my clients that I was coaching end of last year, he was traveling for a whole month and he was actually able to get in better shape without any equipment. So absolutely, like you don't need a fancy gym. You don't even need a treadmill. Um, like body weight exercises, push-ups, squats, and eating clean, like you could definitely live a healthy lifestyle, even in a hostel if you want. So I firmly believe that. Um, but to answer your question, so even with my body, I went through some extreme transformations. When I was young, I was very fat. Uh, and I was actually bullied heavily in middle school. I had no friends. People picked on me. You know, I was invisible to girls. Probably worse. I was actually probably like repulsive to girls. And I remember in eighth grade, I told myself like, I can make a change. I don't know where that belief came from, but I started like learning how to diet on my own. Like I went against like what my parents were feeding me. And looking back, it's kind of crazy because I was 12, right? So where did this energy come from? Um, but I was able to like lose all my weight in one summer. In high school, I did a bunch of hobbies like track and field. At one point, I was a break dancer. So I've always been into kind of pushing the limits with my body. I think it makes me feel fulfilled overall. So when I started traveling, the bodybuilding thing was before I started traveling. And that was 100% ego. I just wanted to look good. Who doesn't, right? And I challenged myself to enter a bodybuilding competition because I knew that that would cure my childhood trauma and phobia of being picked on for my body. I did the whole thing. I had my shirt off. I flexed in front of an auditorium full of hundreds of people. I actually placed last place. But the point was I went out and I did it, right? And after that, when I came to Thailand, I told myself like I have to try Muay Thai. It's the national sport here. Like for me to not do it would be ridiculous. So I went to this gym and I got drunk with the trainers one day, like after training, they're like, "Hey, come and drink beer with us." And I became like close friends with them. And it's weird because we had such a strong language barrier, but I returned back to Chiang Mai 2 times just to train with these guys. And naturally from the beginning, I told myself I would never fight, right? Because I was terrified of it. But when you surround yourself with people who are doing that on the regular, like the trainers are fighting all the time, and I'm sparring with these guys, and hey, like they're not blowing me out of the water in sparring, right? Like I'm able to land some hits. So then I told myself one day, like, oh, maybe I could do this. And I remember it was New Year's Eve 2020. I was like, what do I want to do this year? I was like, I want to do something I'm terrified of. So I signed up for my first fight. A month later, I got in the ring for the first time. Got knocked out cold with a head kick. So that was a crazy experience. And after that, obviously, I was shell shocked, right? And then my next goal was like, all right, you got to go in there at least one more time. You cannot just end this from a KO. So I got in there again 10 months later. And it's funny because this morning, I went to Muay Thai and the trainers were asking me, do you want to fight in a month? So I still kind of have the itch. But I get
it's a lot.
Fight camp is brutal, man. It's like 5-6 hours of training every day for a month. 2 runs, 2 sessions. It's brutal.
The crazy thing is, you thought about it.
Yeah.
You stopped. You're like, you didn't just say no right instantly. You're like, no.
Yeah, they came home and I was like thinking about it. I was remembering it, and then the pre-fight anxiety started kicking in, and I was like, oof, do I really want to do this again? So
You know,
yeah,
being location independent and working on your own terms, like you just naturally thought maybe like, yeah, I could do 5 hours a day when you were in fight mode. Like that's just not possible if you have a 9 to 5. Like that freedom right there to be able to try these new things, is
right,
just is so powerful in itself. Um,
right.
I can't believe we're already 43 minutes in, so I have to try to get to some stuff I want to talk to you. You mentioned that you worked on a Solana project um, in Colombia,
Yeah.
maybe 2022. Can you take me through your journey into Bitcoin discovery and how you're my understanding is you're Bitcoin only now. Can you
Yeah.
take me down that path?
Oh man, I love this question. Thank you.
Great.
So peeling back the onion, right? Going back to your earlier point, I like to call it, there's like multiple layers of the matrix. That might seem weird, right? But I think the first one is like location. So for me, like travel was the first layer of the matrix. And then when I was traveling, like for example, I always wondered, why does the dollar do so well against the Thai baht? Like I always wonder, right? Like as travelers, we a lot of us like we have better standard of living because of geo arbitrage, right? But I never sat down to think and ask like, why is this the case? And then through a Muay Thai gym in Phuket in 2021, I met this. Can I curse on here, or is that not
Yeah,
okay?
definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
so I met this shitcoiner, right? And I like to
Yeah.
call it that because it's not an altcoin, it's a shitcoin. So I met this shitcoin trader at Muay Thai, and him and I became close. And then he's like, "Hey, let's chat one day." And then he told me what fiat is and why it's evil. And I remember during that day, it was like the second layer of the matrix was like, then I'm exposed to this whole new world where things start to make sense. Like, okay, why do we have all these modern wars? What about all these, economic like disasters in these developing countries? Why are these things happening? And then it all made sense. It's because of money printing. But I wasn't convinced of what the solution was yet. At the time, I said, okay, so Bitcoin is like the digital gold, Ethereum is like digital gas or oil, Solana is like, the digital game money or something. I thought there were multiple options. So then, coincidentally, a few months later at a co-working space, I ran into my ex-business partner who lives in Medellin, and he was looking for a front-end developer. And that just happened to be my skill set. And it turns out we had mutual friends. So I took that as a sign and I learned about the project. And I'm just going to give a quick summary. What the project was they were building a Web3 game where the playable characters are NFTs. And the only thing I saw was dollar signs.
Yeah.
Like even I didn't understand it, right? I was like, what benefit is there for a playable character to be an NFT? Why can't we just do this on a centralized database? But the only thing that I saw was like, okay, we mint these NFTs, we sell them, we have our own in-game tokens. And because we're the founding team, we have early access to those tokens. And then later on, we could sell them for a higher price. I wasn't even aware that I was rug pulling people. And I remember the exact moment, end of 2022, we ended up in Lisbon at Breakpoint. It's like the biggest Solana conference. And yeah, it was like 3 days of just like all these game developers and Solana fanatics. And one day we're eating dinner and there's this normie, right? This guy in a business suit, has no idea what crypto is. And he's sitting with us and he asks us, right? He's like, so what benefit is there of having in-game NFTs? And I remember when he asked the table that, all of us looked at each other. And then people started like using a bunch of buzzwords, but no one was able to give him a straight answer. And it was at that moment that I knew, I was like, oh my God, I've been lying to myself for the last 8 months because I want to rug pull and get rich. And then because of the whole FTX thing and some disputes between me and my ex-business partners, I ended up getting kicked out end of 2022. And at that point, I also had enough of Colombia. I was like, I really miss just being able to leave my laptop and go to the bathroom. So I came back to Chiang Mai. And then I met up with our mutual good friend, Sid, Captain Sid.
Nice.
And him and I had already been friends for 3 years before this. So we were pretty close friends. And I remember we sat down for coffee one day. He's like, how was Colombia? And I explained my experience. And he was so straight up with me. He's like, Danny, I don't know how to say this, but you wasted the last year. I was like, why? He's like, you worked on a project with literally has zero value. And then we started meeting every week, and he kept on talking about Bitcoin. Right? And to me at the time, Bitcoin was the boring one, right? Because it's like the least price action, the least amount of money I can make. You know, you can't really develop on Bitcoin, all these things. So in my mind, I was like, why does he keep talking about this boring one? You know, let's talk about some exciting shitcoins. So we met week after week, you know, and then he started sharing some great books. He shared the Bitcoin Standard. I picked up a copy. I started reading it, and, you know, slowly the idea started getting planted in my head. But the book that really changed me was Thank God for Bitcoin.
Nice. By Jimmy Song?
By Jimmy Song. And Captain Sid knew that would hook me because I have a Christian background.
Yeah.
So when I was reading the book, right, and Jimmy Song mentions Bible verses that, for example, talk about the problems of stealing value from citizens, right? Like the Romans were doing this. They were chipping some of the coins and taking some of the silver and different metals for themselves. And what is that? That's inflation. So like just reading the verses, even God is saying, this is ungodly. This is a sin. And then come to transitioning, like, here's this thing, Bitcoin, where the supply is limited forever, right? And there's no team behind it. And to me, that was the breaker at that moment when I realized that altcoins they'll never be Bitcoin, right? That there's always a central marketing and dev team behind these altcoins. And that's the problem, because without them pushing the narrative, no one adopts it. And because no one adopts it and no one believes in it, at the end of the day, people are just rugging each other. But Bitcoin, there's no team. And that was the moment where I sold all my altcoins and been Bitcoin only ever since probably June 2023.
So 2 years now.
2 years. Yeah.
Well, this is so exciting. So like traveling, you had that moment where you realized your life working in a cubicle 9 to 5 in DC, in Delaware, Maryland, or Virginia, Delaware, you realized that this was all pretend and this is not real. You don't like I heard you say football, like, what the fuck am I sitting around with these guys watching someone go throw a ball across a line? And like kind of like you mentioned the Romans, they said, give them bread in a circus and keep them busy.
Yeah.
And then you had another revelation years into your solo travel that you're working on the wrong project, but you had the courage to know that, like, so many people will just continue down that path because it's so hard to admit that you're wrong. Like you said earlier in this podcast, like, people need to lie to themselves for comfort and security, or what they think is comfort and security. Right. So you broke through that shell, and then you're able to break through the shell of Solana, luckily, because Captain Sid kind of told you. It's kind of aggressive for Captain Sid to tell somebody, you just wasted a year of your life. You know, like, but that's also a good friend because he's trying to get you there quicker.
He's the man.
You know, that's so awesome. And like, I wonder if in your travels, is there like, did you ever wonder, like, when I went to Laos 5 years ago, and I went maybe like a year ago, I realized that the Lao kip had lost over 50% of its value. I also do a lot of exchange wire transfers and I remember going to the ATM. And every time I go to the ATM, it's like $6 from my bank, $6 from your bank, like conversion and conversions. As a traveler, do you think that these were those little touch points as well? Do you have any of those along the way that also
Mm.
reinforce your Bitcoin thesis?
Yeah, 100%. I think the unique thing about international travel is we're able to see kind of the illusion of money, right? If you're stuck, for example, like if you live your whole life in the US and you never leave, I have a lot of American friends who tell me a dollar is a dollar, right? And then I challenge that. I'm like, okay, so define a dollar, right? I'm like, so tell me why with a dollar, maybe 50 years ago, you could buy a dozen eggs, but why can't you do that now? And then their mind goes blank, right? So what's cool is with these exchange rates, we're able to see value as a separate thing from money. The value being whatever product or service that, helps us. So let's give the example of an egg. An egg is valuable because that's nutrition for us, right? But you go back to Laos a year later and that same egg is worth double. And then we start to question, why is this the case? And then we're able to see in real time, like, oh, it's because the central banks keep printing money. And then we realize, oh, this is why, there's so many problems. People can't afford houses anymore. People have to take out loans from banks. And then we're able to see this cycle perpetuating over and over again. But again, in real time, because I think a place like, the thing about the West is I think inflation is generally slower than a country like Laos. So on a day-to-day, a lot of people, they can see it, but they're able to ignore it, versus I think Laotians are not able to because it affects their life in such a dramatic way.
Same with the Burmese just north of us. They like, in the West, I say, depending on who we're talking to, it's the investment thesis.
Yeah.
Like store value, price appreciation, speculative. But like if you look at Burma, they need it. Like they have a real problem. They have a different problem. They either need something stable, like a stable coin, or Bitcoin,
Right.
because they can't do cross-border remittance easy. There's crazy fees. There's crazy challenges. So yeah, like, that was an eye opener too. I like to ask Bitcoiners like yourself, can you remember the last day that you were able to go one full day without thinking about Bitcoin?
Oh man.
A
Wow.
full 24 hours.
Honestly, probably 2.5 years ago.
See,
Yeah.
isn't this such a profound question? Imagine that. Like I've never had someone say, actually, yeah, last week I went to 24, because there's something so powerful and moving about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like it changed me too. I used to be very, very big. I used to, and your tweets are on their screen. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to talk to you. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember you mentioned that you quit alcohol and pot and like that happened during your transition of being a Bitcoiner. I'm sure, I believe the timing, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna say yes and no, but I think yes.
Because I started reading some of your tweets were kind of like, I might want to pull up a few of them that I captured me. But like when you realize that Bitcoin's in your life, all of a sudden you're able to like have more clarity because you could trust that those eggs aren't going to be twice as expensive in a few years.
Yes. Yes. It's like you're not in this hurry anymore and you're not worried. And with that, you're able to think longer term. So
That's
an example, 100%.
Like,
yeah.
The last 2 years of you, if you look back, those are powerfully transformative years for you, you know. And also when you're on the Bitcoin standard or that Bitcoin philosophy like that, you start to say, wait a minute, I want to see what an abundant life for everyone looks like. Like, I don't want to be like fat and out of shape and dead or heart attack or like made some poor drunk decision and now like I have some permanent problem. Because the more of us talking about how Bitcoin's changed us and helped us, the more it can help more people. And then eventually, like, all of this stuff, like you said, fiat funds war and famine and all this shit, like all that starts to go away because they're unable to print money if more people are on Bitcoin standard.
Right.
So, you know, I just like to talk about that and ask you, like, you know, what do you think for people in Thailand or Southeast Asia or India? How could Bitcoin help them? Like what is what could be a message for someone watching this that's listening to us talk about this, trying to figure out, maybe they haven't had Captain Sid come and plug you in, and like, how do we share why it's so purposeful, why we have so much passion behind it, why we can't go 2 years without thinking about it?
Right. So I'm going to say a lot of things that
go after it
that might get us in trouble, but who cares?
That's okay.
So I think a very clear example is what's happening in Myanmar right now with the civil war. There's a military government that staged a coup. They took over and people are rebelling, right? So people want the country to be democratic again. And the rebels, they're literally getting frozen out. So their bank accounts are getting frozen, their assets. And I remember actually someone spoke at the Bitcoin Learning Center. I forgot his name. This was back in February from Myanmar, and he gave this talk. And yes. And I remember during the talk, what gave me chills was he was saying, not only is it the rebels, but it's anyone who contacts the rebels. So you know what I mean? It's they're trying to prevent anyone from even giving them funds to feed themselves. And in such an oppressive place like Myanmar right now, what would benefit these people is having a Bitcoin wallet, because no one can stop Bitcoin, not even a government. So if you and I want to help someone in need in Myanmar, we can send them Bitcoin. And even if they're blocked from having a traditional bank account, they'd be able to receive that Bitcoin and, you know, maybe pay for eggs, for example, with it. So this is just a very real and applicable example that's happening in the region right now. And I'm not going to name specific countries, but there's a lot of other countries in the region that have similar oppression that a lot of people feel. And it might not be as urgent as Myanmar, but it's definitely real. And I notice a lot of locals in these countries are just fed up with it, you know, and Bitcoin is an answer for them to be able to be free from these oppressive systems.
You know, I saw, if you go to a Human Rights Foundation site, they'll show you on a map the authoritarian regimes in Southeast Asia that are under financial oppression. And all of them, like even Thailand, like, you know, we're just like, okay, we're like the better of all of them. Like Brunei's tough, Cambodia, Laos, obviously China, Vietnam, like the whole Indonesia, Malaysia, they all kind of fit into that. And Southeast Asia is like, that's why what we're doing right now with this podcast is so important, because we're trying to just, the Bitcoin Chiang Mai podcast, they're reaching over 1,000 people a day, like educating. Yeah. This is fire, dude. Awesome. So we're like, okay, let's do more of that. We want to help in our company Slack. Like we've got the strong Burmese teams in our Slack. We've got Lao teams in our Slack. We want to help them create like a media. We want to help them, you know, we want to help them do different things. But like for Lao, for example, when we share, hey, here's a format we did here in Thailand that's worked well for us, they said, we'll get kidnapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, we'll get murdered or kidnapped. And like, this is crazy words, but we have to be thoughtful about not everything fits for everyone. Not everything's the same for every nearby culture. But working with HRF, it's so funny. Like, dude, they give grants to different like Bitcoin projects all over the world. And then I was like, hey, we're having this Bitcoin marathon and festival. Like, we're going to be exposing 10,000 people to Bitcoin that have never worn. 3,000 people will be wearing the shirt, they're feeling proud, excited. You know, and they're like, oh, we don't sponsor events. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, and I went through like the process and had the interview. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, we got this successful podcast and we want to do like, you know, all this stuff. They're like, we don't do podcasts. I'm like, my next one was great. My next little, because there's no limit to how many times you could submit the shit, right?
Right.
And like, I know that there's just nowhere within 1,000 miles of Chiang Mai, Thailand that's doing what we're doing. They're just not. Like, we're just on fire. Everyone's just firing on all pistons to try to help as many people onto Bitcoin as possible. So I wrote, like, hey, we're the only one working with three universities in northern Thailand. You know, speaking at them, we're working with the high schools on integrating this Node Nation project out of Switzerland that's performed in El Salvador. Working with the government in Thailand, like educating the city staff. There's no one within 2,000 kilometers doing this. And we're going to help out these other local nations because they need this information the most. So and at the end of the thing, that says, because I was really polite in like the first one, and I was really polite in like second one. The third one, I'm like, we're doing it anyway, whether you fund us or not, because the mission is that important.
Let's go.
And, you know, I know, you know, like the cream, like excellence, people see what's going on. So yeah, I think like Bitcoin could really help out here in Southeast Asia. I say here, my brain's like,
right. You're still there.
Yeah. So, and like today we had a gaming company, kids that created this game, called like The Evolution of Money, or they came to our office and like our staff had played the game. They do a podcast to talk about it. You know, we're helping them share this game around so kids can learn. You know, when we go to the Hill Tribes and we introduce Noster, because they're already on Facebook and TikTok. Right. We're like, hey, these children's homes or orphanages, like they say in America, they've never interacted with Thai bot or fiat before. So their first interaction is this like Primal or Damis or Yaki Honap, and then they're getting these points, which are sats, and their first interaction with money is Bitcoin.
That's crazy, man. Their first interaction is with the realest money that there will ever be. Super cool, right? Yeah. And and I'm Christian too, and I noticed you're a Christian because I saw one of your muscle tats. I saw your fitness, and you have a tattoo, a Corinthians tattoo. Yeah. I actually, during Christmas, I was like, you know what? I've had a lot of success in my fiat business. It's still going. 12 years. We're one of the largest food delivery companies that helps food delivery companies in America. We're the secret logistics guys behind it. So we were at one time the largest, and it's still going. And luckily I figured out I had started with Ethereum and Bitcoin, and then I remember like in 2020, the day that I read the Bitcoin Standard, 2021. I read the Bitcoin Standard, and I was like half and half, and I was like, dude, 3 years of my life. And I started, bro. I know we're pushing the hour. You still got 10 minutes? I still got 10 minutes.
All right, cool, bro. I got involved in this in 2017 because somebody told me to get involved in this fun new way casino thing, and so I put like a few $1,000s in like Tron and like this Cardano thing, whatever the top 10 were.
Yeah.
And I went to play poker that night at the bar. And then I woke up in the morning and my brother texted me. He's like, dude, you're rich.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this thing went from 2 cents to 20 cents and you put like $5,000 into it. Dude, this was a devil because it set me down the wrong path for 3 years.
Right.
Because I had this moment of success where I'm a genius, you know, these fucking altcoins. And so I went down this path and pain, end of 17, 18, 19 into 20. And when I figured it out, it was like another moment where I just got pretty emotional. Like, dude, how did I make this mistake? How am I think I'm smart? And why can I not realize that Bitcoin solves so many problems and it helps so many disadvantaged people? And like, what was I doing? So I got really deeply sad about that discovery. But I had started putting all the profits of the company into Bitcoin along the way, everything. I was 100% Bitcoin for 4 or 5 years. When FTX happened, I stepped in front of the train. I'm like, let's go all in. I started doing crazy things like, because the company's doing well, I would do like a $50,000 loan for a year, 10% uncollateralized, pay it off, and then get 2 Bitcoin. And then like when it's 37,000, I did a $75,000 loan, 2 Bitcoin. I did all these tricks and things. In December of this year, I said, I have an idea. And I was really going to do this, but the Christian community, there's 4,000 of them in Omgoi, which is just outside of Chiang Mai. I've been there with Captain Sid. We should go sometime. It's just cool to check out. If you're down, we could go.
I think Captain Sid mentioned that. Yeah.
We should do it together someday. It's just a fun ride. And so I said, you know what? I think maybe if I could continue the education, because Bitcoin helped build 100 children kitchen. It helped to build dormitories, bathrooms, kitchens where they're kitchen on dirt. Like, we've done some good stuff because of Bitcoin. Couldn't have done it without it. I said, what if we donate 1 Bitcoin to this tribe, this Christian tribe, with the premise that they could only take out 10% every year during Christmas. And it's in a multi-sig. So the Bitcoin Learning Center will have a key. The leading pastor will have a key. Another tribe leader will have a key.
Yeah.
And now, if you look at this game plan here, and if Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do, or even you look at like Michael Saylor, just for easy reference, if it's 21 million in 21 years, like to feed 4,000 people, it's like $275,000. After the first 5 or 10 years of just taking 10%, it'll be there.
Yeah.
Like, you'll start earning $200,000 per dollars because the Bitcoin is now at 2 million and you're allowed to take 10%. So in 10 years, if it's at 2 million, and you still taking 10%, you'll be able to fund the entire, maybe like a little longer. Wait till it be 3 million, 10%, 300,000.
Yeah.
And I had this revelation. I'm like, this is one of the greatest things I could do for humanity.
Yes.
Like, this is what I should do. But I need someone to take it serious on their side. Yeah. Because if you just give somebody something, you tend to lose the value.
100%.
And I thought that was a big thing. And there is a circle of them watching all the stuff we're doing. Mm-hmm. And in Thai, even though they speak Karen, they're watching the Thai podcast. They're learning. They're coming to our, we still bring the kids down every year. We still go there. It's just a lot slower.
Yeah.
But my hope and belief is one day they'll come to me and say, we really believe in this. And then the Christian community can now not only survive, but thrive.
Yes.
Imagine at 20 million a coin in 20 years, if they're still just taking 10%, They've got $2 million US when they just need 300,000 to survive in today's money.
Exactly.
What their expansion could look like, what their healthcare could look like, what their children's education could look like.
Right. I'm imagining the village. I've never been there, but I'm imagining it now, like 20 years from now, and what it could possibly look like. And that's why I always tell you, bro, like, you're doing the Lord's work. And
you do say that. You do say
I always reply to your tweets. You're doing the Lord's work. These are very important projects.
We love what we do here. We love what we do here. I'm just so glad people like you come and just showing up is so showing support because, you know, like you want to, you want to make it great for everybody. And I think like there's this cross-pollinating when we get together in real life. Like this is awesome. Podcasting is as close as we could get, or video calls like FaceTime. But I think like there's this infectious energy when you see the proof of work of people putting the time to build, to educate, to help, to inspire.
Yes.
You know, and I think you're showing that with your lifestyle and your transition and your discovery from solo travel to health and wellness, to a fitness coach, to a Bitcoiner. I mean, I think that you're a really great example for everybody, everyone, people that think that your lifestyle is so far away, you're a great goal. For people that have experienced it, you're like, how excited I get when I hear about all these things that you're doing. And then as a Bitcoiner, it's like so wonderful to have you in Chiang Mai as an expat, telling your story, building your brand, working remotely, because we could show people your discovery and your success and that, look, Danny did it. You can too, you know?
Yes.
So I'm just so grateful for being friends.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. You know, I draw a lot of parallels between us, like Christianity, Bitcoin, travel. And I think all three are linked together. That's what's really cool. These are not separate silos, right? Like these are revelations that are all kind of put together. And I just want to say one last point. It's that I notice a lot of Bitcoiners on Twitter are arguing with non-Bitcoiners, right? They're saying like, how can you be so stupid? Like anyone with a brain can understand this. But what I'm starting to understand is it has little to do with intelligence to understand Bitcoin. It has more to do with bravery and honesty. Because some of the smartest people I know, like on paper, intellectually, are still bought into Ethereum, for example, right? So I don't think it has to do with intelligence. I think it has to do with like having the cojones to say like, okay, like this is morally questionable, not even questionable, this is morally wrong, and this is morally correct. So I'm going to stand by this. So I just want to put that point. And I hope the work you're doing with the village, that, you know, they'll also grow real conviction from watching the podcast, from attending as many events as possible, from us visiting. I hope that we can instill in them that real conviction and really that they can get behind it. And not just them, but the whole region, like you said, and, you know, the bigger picture is the whole world. So I'll be in Chiang Mai in November for the marathon. So
cool. We just got like a ping from like it's a big deal. So the city's very involved. Just as we were doing the podcast, BitCub is like, wants to be involved. Tether is the title sponsor. Like, this is as strong as it gets. And it's way bigger than people think. And we just got pinged by the Bank of Thailand and the finance minister, because the goal was to get their attention. But now they really don't love the Bitcoin village part that's like has the merchant side of things. But you know, what we did with this is, when I heard they were going to have a Bitcoin sandbox in Phuket, I thought this is a golden opportunity, because if they fuck up, we got it right up north. And if we use that momentum, we could protect Thailand to be the leading the leader in digital innovation or digital assets by having the right education in the north.
Yes.
So no matter what you guys do down there in Phuket, that you make mistakes, at least you've got a foundation of what really is going on. So what we did, Danny, we created it to where there's availability to have like a conference. And we didn't want to do a Bitcoin conference. We're just Bitcoin educators. We're not way outside of our scope. The Bitcoin Marathon and Festival is enough for your first year. But we told the city, hey, we do have like this entire like half day or day. If you think that leadership from the government, the top of the government, like the prime minister, would like to talk on the topic, it's open for you.
Oof.
And now, I mean, I guess whenever this podcast airs, people will know the prime minister is scheduled to speak at the Bitcoin Marathon Festival.
Wow.
The finance minister is scheduled to speak at the Bitcoin Marathon Festival, and leaders from the top banking sector that are involved in all different hierarchies and provinces are scheduled to speak in Thai in a 200-person room or something. So they've got this platform and space that we created. We just manifested it. So hopefully Thailand could become a leader, and we could be one of the first ones, and we could help the rest of the Southeast Asian countries.
I love it, man. You're I like to call it you're making ripples, right? You're making ripples. If the prime minister wants to talk, then that's going to turn a lot of heads. Which is
so we'll see how that goes. We'll be there. We'll both be there. And you know, and real quick before we go, the day before, a lot of people are coming to town. Is October 31st, which is the day before the festival, which is the second is the marathon. That is the day that's just worked out randomly, serendipity. It's the Bitcoin white paper release date. So we're going to have a white paper party. It'll be at least 300 Bitcoiners at Bitcoin Learning Center. That building can hold 100. I think I'll have it across the street if we could get the scheduling right. So Friday will be really fun, and we're gonna have massive digital boards, Bitcoin, Tether. Stablecoins do help these people. So I'm excited to hopefully see you in August. I think we're gonna have a meetup. HRF's coming September 10th. I'm speaking in Hong Kong at the Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong, the end of August. I'm speaking at Bitcoin Indonesia the first week in September. And then the first week in September, we're going to have a huge meetup on September 10th. So if you're in town, we'd love to have you.
Yeah. And I love joining the event. So I'll see you soon.
Nice. Danny, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to be with us. And I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Jimmy. It was a great
Hang out for
chat.
a minute. I want to make sure we do something.
Sure.